Ever wondered where women outnumber men by a huge margin? Imagine living in a place where women dominate the population, not just by a little, but by a lot. Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of gender imbalance, and trust me, some of the reasons behind this phenomenon will leave you amazed. We might think the world is split pretty evenly between men and women, right? But in some countries, that balance swings way more towards women. Why is that? What's behind these surprising numbers? Well, it's a mix of health, history, and even migration. Stay tuned, because we're starting with a country that will blow your mind with its gender gap. Russia, a closer. Look at history and current gender ratio. Let's kick things off with Russia, where, for every 100 women, there are only about 86 men. You heard that right. So, what's going on here? One of the biggest reasons is life expectancy. Women in Russia live almost 10 years longer than men on average. That's a huge gap. Why? Well, lifestyle plays a big part. Things like higher smoking rates and alcohol consumption among men have a serious impact. And let's not forget the effects of history. World War II hit Russia hard, with a devastating loss of men. Even decades later, this tragedy left a lasting mark on the population. When you look at the older generations in Russia, it's overwhelmingly women, making the country one of the most imbalanced in the world. Ukraine, health and demographic challenges. Next up, Ukraine, and guess what? It's pretty similar to Russia. For every 100 women, there are around 86-87 men. Again, men here have a shorter life expectancy. No surprise there. But there's another interesting factor at play: emigration. A lot of young men leave Ukraine for work, often to other countries in Europe. This migration pattern leaves a noticeable gender gap, especially in urban areas. And get this, the imbalance can even affect relationships. Imagine being in a place where there are way more women than men. That could shake up dating, marriage, and even family dynamics in some communities. Latvia, Europe's most imbalanced country. Now, let's talk about Latvia, where things get even more extreme. Latvia has one of the most significant gender gaps in the entire world. For every 100 women, there are only about 85 men. That's right, 85. This Baltic country has been dealing with a serious life expectancy gap, where women just outlive men by a good margin. And just like in Ukraine, many young men have left Latvia for better job opportunities abroad, leaving even fewer men behind. So, what does that mean for the local population? Well, in some regions, it's not uncommon for there to be almost 10% more women than men. Imagine that. Estonia, another Baltic example. Let's head to Latvia's neighbor, Estonia, where the story is pretty similar. Estonia has about 88 men for every 100 women. Like in other Eastern European countries, health and lifestyle choices make a big difference. Plus, just like in Latvia, many men leave for work, further widening the gap. What's particularly interesting about these Baltic countries is that, even though they're small, the gender imbalance is huge. You wouldn't expect such a significant difference in such compact countries, but here we are. Belarus, the influence of history and health. Moving on to Belarus, where the gender ratio stands at about 87 men to 100 women. Belarus has seen similar trends as its neighbors: shorter life expectancy for men, and the lasting effects of wars that shaped the population. Men tend to face more severe health challenges earlier in life here, which contributes to the overall gap. But here's a twist. As these trends continue, the gender imbalance doesn't just affect population numbers. It can have an impact on society as a whole. Let's explore that. The social and economic impacts of gender imbalance. Now, here's where things get really interesting. A significant gender imbalance can reshape society in some surprising ways. In countries where women outnumber men, especially in the older generations, you often find more women living alone. This has real consequences for things like marriage rates and even care for the elderly. In some places where the population is more female-dominated, women might step into roles traditionally held by men, especially in industries where there's a labor shortage. But the flip side is that it can also create challenges for sectors that relied heavily on a male workforce. This ripple effect can change the entire economy in unexpected ways. Countries where women outnumber men, surprising gender imbalances. Conclusion: a global phenomenon with local impacts. So, while most of the world's population is split evenly between men and women, some countries like Russia, Ukraine, Latvia, Estonia, and Belarus tell a very different story. Their gender imbalances are shaped by complex factors like health, migration, and even the lingering impacts of history. But what about you? Do you live in a country with a similar gender gap? And how do you think this imbalance shapes the community around you? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And before you go, don't forget to like and subscribe for more fascinating facts from around the world.